The story begins with Ichiro, an elderly man who moves into a new house with his family. He spent all of his life savings to buy this house, hoping it would bring them a better life. But his family wasn't happy. They didn't like the house at all, and sadly, they didn't appreciate Ichiro either. For years, they saw him as a failure, never acknowledging his hard work. Even as he grew older, Ichiro continued to work tirelessly, trying to keep his family happy and fulfill their wishes. But nothing he did seemed to be enough. They often scolded him for little things, and over time, their criticism weighed him down. Ichiro started feeling more and more lonely, slipping into depression. One day on his way home from work, he saw a group of people beating someone in the street. He wanted to help, but he knew he was too old and weak to intervene, so he walked away. Unfortunately, his daughter saw him do nothing and, in her anger, called him a coward before storming off. Her words stung deeply, making Ichiro feel even more helpless. When he arrived home, Ichiro noticed a dog sitting outside. He approached the dog and saw that it had a band around its neck with a message that said anyone could take the dog in. Ichiro felt an immediate connection with the animal, and for the first time in a long while, the dog's affection brought him some comfort. However, just as he began to feel a bit better, his wife came out and scolded him once again. She didn't like dogs and demanded he get rid of it. She reminded him to focus on his health instead, as he had an appointment the next day. The following day, Ichiro went to the doctor. He received devastating news. He had cancer and only a few months left to live. The shock hit him hard, and he immediately tried to call his wife to tell her the terrible news. But she didn't answer, dismissing his call as unimportant. Desperate, he reached out to his daughter, but she too ignored him, leaving Ichiro feeling utterly alone at one of the darkest moments of his life. At dinner that night, Ichiro gathers the courage to tell his family about his cancer diagnosis. But as usual, his family doesn't seem interested. They don't want to listen to him, and one by one, they leave the table without giving him a chance to speak. Ichiro sits there in silence, realizing that to them, he simply doesn't matter. Once again, he's left feeling invisible and ignored. Afterward, Ichiro tries to get rid of the dog, as his wife had demanded. He leads the dog away, but the loyal animal refuses to leave Ichiro's side. Deep down, Ichiro doesn't want to part with the dog either. The bond they've formed brings Ichiro some comfort, so he decides to keep the dog with him. Ichiro is sitting outside when his attention is drawn to a young boy sitting in the park. The boy's name is Hiro, and he seems lost in thought. Suddenly, Ichiro notices something strange, a shiny object rapidly approaching from the sky. Before he can react, the object crashes to the ground, hitting both Ichiro and Hiro. The impact leaves them both lifeless. The next morning, Ichiro wakes up completely healed. He's confused, not understanding what happened to him the night before. The cancer that had plagued him seems to be gone, and his body feels different. As he heads home, a strange feeling lingers. Something is not right. Back in his room, he starts noticing bizarre changes. Smoke begins to rise from his hand, and when he touches his wrist, a USB port suddenly emerges where his nails used to be. Shocked, Ichiro touches his neck, and to his horror, his head opens up like a machine. Within moments, his entire body starts coming apart like pieces of a mechanical puzzle. Ichiro is left terrified, trying to comprehend what's happening to him. It turns out that the object that fell from the sky wasn't an asteroid at all, but an alien ship. In the crash, Ichiro had died, but the aliens had brought him back, only now he was no longer fully human. They had transformed him into a humanoid robot, leaving Ichiro with a body he no longer recognized, and a future filled with uncertainty. In the next scene, we see Hiro, who has also been transformed into an advanced robot by the alien team. Hiro, being a quick learner, figures out how to use his new powers almost immediately. He decides to show them to his friend Naoyuki, but Naoyuki doesn't believe him at first. To prove it, Hiro raises his finger and shoots a pigeon right in front of them. Shocked by the demonstration, Naoyuki finally believes him. They begin testing Hiro's powers together, but Hiro's abilities are not without consequences. Whenever Hiro sees a happy family, it fills him with rage. His life has been full of frustration, living in poverty with his mother while his father has moved on to a new life with another family. This anger boils inside him, and it's clear that the sight of happiness only reminds him of what he doesn't have. Meanwhile, Ichiro, on his way to work, spots the injured pigeon Hiro had killed earlier. Ichiro picks it up, and to his surprise, the bird fully heals in his hands and flies away. This moment makes Ichiro realize he has the ability to heal any injured creature, human or animal. Wanting to help more, Ichiro heads to a nearby hospital where he sees a woman crying over her son who is on the brink of death due to cancer. Touched by her sorrow, Ichiro secretly uses his powers to heal the boy, bringing him back to full health. As Hiro continues to experiment with his powers, his darker side begins to emerge. He starts starts bullying the boys at his college, using his newfound abilities to intimidate them. Naoyuki is horrified by this change in his friend and begs Hiro to stop, but Hiro doesn't listen. Later, Hiro receives a call from his stepmother, inviting him to dinner. He reluctantly agrees and goes to their house, where he sees his father happily living with his new family. The sight frustrates Hiro even more. He feels a burning desire to destroy them all, his father, his stepmother, and their perfect life together. But in the end, he holds back and leaves, though the anger and frustration inside him continue to grow. On his way home, Hiro's frustration reaches a breaking point when he sees another happy family. This time, he can't hold back and kills the entire family in a fit of rage. But it doesn't stop there. Hiro goes on a killing spree, targeting families throughout the city. News quickly spreads about a brutal psycho killer on the loose, terrifying the entire community. When Ichiro hears about the killings, he is horrified. Determined to save a family, he rushes to one of the houses. However, when he arrives, he finds a young girl already dead from a bullet wound to the head. Ichiro tries desperately to revive her, using his powers, but he realizes his abilities only work on the living, leaving him devastated. As he stands there, Hiro arrives, intending to kill Ichiro as well. Ichiro narrowly escapes, and by the time he turns around, Hiro has disappeared. Meanwhile, Naoyuki, after learning the terrible truth that his friend Hiro is responsible for the killings, breaks off their friendship. The loss of Naoyuki's friendship deeply affects Hiro, who feels a mix of sadness and anger. However, his destructive path continues. At the same time, Ichiro's life falls apart even more. He loses his job, and when he returns home, he discovers his son no longer wants to go to school because of bullying, and his daughter has dropped out of college. To make matters worse, Ichiro's wife tells him she wants a divorce, convinced that he is of no use to the family. Overwhelmed by these problems, Ichiro breaks down, crying alone in despair. Just then, Ichiro hears Naoyuki's voice, filled with sorrow and regret over Hiro's actions. Using his powers, Ichiro quickly reaches Naoyuki. Naoyuki explains everything, sharing how Hiro has been killing people and how it weighs heavily on him. Ichiro, saddened by what Hiro has become, comforts Naoyuki and promises that he will stop Hiro before any more harm is done. Ichiro continues his training with Naoyuki, trying to master his powers. During practice, he realizes that drinking too much water causes strange reactions in his body, and when he drinks more than usual, he accidentally sprays water all over Naoyuki. It becomes clear to Ichiro that his body can no longer handle water like before, forcing him to adapt to this new limitation. Meanwhile, Hiro is traveling with his mother when a police officer confronts him, having discovered that Hiro is responsible for the citywide killings. Instead of surrendering, Hiro uses his powers to injure several officers and escapes to his girlfriend's house. There, he watches the news and learns that after the media harassed his mother, she took her own life. Heartbroken and enraged, Hiro blames the people for her death and vows revenge. He begins using his powers to kill even more people, hacking into their phones and computers to execute his deadly plan. His girlfriend, though aware of Hiro's involvement, does nothing to stop him, thinking that his grief will pass and that he will soon return to normal. Back at home, Ichiro desperately tries to warn his family not to use their phones or computers, fearing Hiro might target them. However, his family dismisses his warnings and walks away, leaving Ichiro helpless. Hiro, determined to stop killing, makes a promise to himself to change. But when a police officer arrives and opens fire without warning, Hiro narrowly survives. While his girlfriend is fatally shot, her death shatters Hiro, and in a blind rage, he destroys the police officers and all the surrounding buildings. His anger grows, and he resolves to wipe out everyone in the area by hacking and destroying the city's electronic devices one by one. Panic spreads throughout the city as people begin to die mysteriously, and everyone starts fleeing in fear. In the meantime, a group of boys from Hiro's college watches his actions on their smartphones, thinking it's some kind of prank. Hiro, furious at their disbelief, uses his powers to kill them one by one, intensifying the chaos and horror in the city. On the other side, Ichiro is deeply disturbed by the ongoing destruction in the city caused by Hiro's rampage. Determined to stop the chaos, Ichiro uses his powers to gain control over the same electronic gadgets that Hiro had been manipulating. At the same time, Naoyuki, aware of the danger, warns the people of the city not to use their smartphones, TVs, or any electronic devices, as that would make them vulnerable to Hiro's attacks. The people heed his warning, abandoning their devices, which frustrates Hiro even more. In a fit of rage, Hiro launches a full-scale attack on the city. During this assault, a missile hits the building where Ichiro's daughter is, leaving her badly injured. Ichiro, horrified by the sight of his wounded daughter, rushes to confront Hiro. He pleads with Hiro to stop the destruction, but Hiro, consumed by anger, danger, refuses and attacks Ichiro instead. Ichiro narrowly escapes the assault and takes off running, with Hiro relentlessly chasing him. During the chase, a helicopter flies between them, and Hiro tries to use his powers to crash it and kill the pilot. But Ichiro, in a heroic effort, manages to save the pilot just in time. Furious, Hiro continues pursuing Ichiro, and the two engage in a long and intense fight. As the battle drags on, Ichiro realizes that Hiro is far stronger than he is. Unable to defeat Hiro directly, Ichiro tries to outlast him, hoping for an opportunity. Eventually, Hiro becomes tired and drinks water to regain his strength. However, the water has an adverse effect on Hiro's robotic body, slowly weakening him. Though it takes time for the water to fully affect him, Hiro continues his assault on Ichiro, dragging him into space in an attempt to kill him there. But just as Hiro prepares to finish Ichiro off, the water begins to take its toll. Hiro weakens, and Ichiro seizes the chance to deliver a powerful, final blow. Hiro, unable to recover, is killed by the attack. With Hiro defeated, Ichiro rushes back to his daughter, who is on the brink of death, her life slipping away. The weight of the battle and the cost it has taken on Ichiro is clear as he holds his daughter, devastated by everything that has happened. After Ichiro uses his powers to heal his daughter, things take a terrifying turn as Hiro, still alive, suddenly reappears. Hiro attacks Ichiro, injuring him badly and shooting his daughter, worsening her condition. Then, in a cruel move, Hiro grabs Ichiro's daughter and starts throwing her off the building, intending to kill her once and for all. At this point, Ichiro is in terrible shape, but despite his injuries, he refuses to give up. Desperation and anger build inside him as he pleads with Hiro to kill him instead and spare his daughter. Hiro, driven by a desire for revenge, coldly ignores Ichiro's plea and throws the girl off the building. This triggers something deep within Ichiro. His hidden superpowers fully awaken. In a surge of rage and newfound strength, Ichiro leaps into action, defeating Hiro in a brutal and final battle. Just as his daughter plummets toward the ground, Ichiro catches her in the nick of time, saving her life. With Hiro finally defeated, Ichiro uses the last of his strength to completely heal his daughter. She's utterly shocked and asks him how he managed to do all of this. Ichiro, still processing everything himself, simply responds, "I'll tell you later," before flying off into the distance, leaving her in awe. In the next scene, news reporters announce how an angel saved the people from Hiro's terror, with Ichiro being hailed as a hero. After learning the truth about his actions, Ichiro's daughter and the rest of his family, who once didn't respect him, now see him in a new light. They finally begin to admire and appreciate him. The movie concludes with a suspenseful twist. Hiro, though believed to be dead, is shown to still be alive. The screen fades to black, leaving the story open for a possible sequel. Thanks for tuning in, guys.